Hi folks, Officer Kelleher, Merrimack PD. Today we have a very special guest with us today. I'd like to introduce Adam Jacobs. He's the operations manager for the Highway Department. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you coming.
Pleasure, thank you.
This month's episode is going to be all about winter issues. And unfortunately, we've already been hit with pretty hard with some of the winter issues that, come upon us this time of year. So, I'd like to talk about first and foremost is, a big part of your snow fighting, job is being able to plow the streets and, not having anybody, impede that and, any delays. So we want to talk about, some of the obligations that residents, have to assist us, not only, doing our job as the police rendering, services, but also for the DPW so you guys can be efficient and, get your job done effectively as well. You want to just tell the folks some of the ordinances we have for, for those.
Sure. We've got we've three major ordinances in town that deal with winter operations, and those are namely the parking ban is the big one that folks know about. And all three of these ordinances are in effect from November 15th through April 15th each year. The first being the winter parking ban. So from November 15th to April 15th, we ask that the town requires that no cars be parked overnight on the streets from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. So that allows anything that might happen overnight. Sometimes we have trucks that get called out, a little freezing rain event or some black ice, and it might not be a snowstorm in the forecast, so folks don't think about it, but we still have to have those big trucks get out there and be able to treat the streets. So it's important to be off the roads in the middle of the night when we're most likely to get called in for those small treatment events.
And I think we had one of those this past week here where, it warmed up during the day and, the roads were all wet, and as soon as the temperature drops, you guys are getting called out.
That's right. You get melts during the day and then a refreeze at night, and can lead to some icy spots in isolated areas. So it's important to be ready for that. So that's one of the reasons for the winter parking ban. And then the other, of course, is for actual snow removal. So there's a second ordinance that sort of dovetails with that, and that is the same time of year, November to April, but it asks that folks not park on the streets any time of day if it's in a manner that's going to impede plowing. So even if the parking ban isn't in effect because it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if it's snowing outside and we have plows out, there might be a case where we're going to have folks move off the side of the road so we can get the plow through, or the wing plow might be down and we're trying to push right to the edge of pavement. So we need to have folks off the road itself. But also you could actually park right at the road edge inside the right-of-way on the gravel shoulder, but also be impeding snow removal just because you're so close to the road that there's no way for the truck to get around you or to allow traffic to pass in both directions. And in some areas the road is so narrow that parking right at the road edge or on the road at all makes it impossible for a large vehicle to get around. So there's the two main ones. No parking overnight, 11 to 6, and then no parking during a snowstorm if it's going to impede the plows. And then the third is sort of a special case where we might have to declare a snow emergency. So if we had a blizzard condition, the police chief, public works director, and town manager would probably get together with the fire chief, and they might talk about a snow emergency. And if that's declared, then we ask that people not park on the streets at all, whether or not it's snowing at this point or not. A situation where this might come up is we've had a blizzard and now it's a day or two later and everybody tries to get off their property and into the street so they might be able to clear their driveways. Well, we might be coming through trying to clear snow or push snowbanks back even though it's a blue sky day. The plows might be out. So if there's a snow emergency that's been declared, we really need folks to stay off the road in that case as well. So those three are the main ordinances for snow emergencies anyway.
Now, just like you said, if people park, at the end of their driveway, right at the roadway, or right on the shoulder of the road, to me, that's still impeding your plow drivers, because if you're trying to clear that whole right of way, the roadway, well, you need space for that snow to go beyond the plow. Obviously, you don't
right.
want to, damage somebody's property. I mean, there might be ice from the road, and you're pushing it off the roadway. If you're leaving your car on the side of the road or, the end of the driveway, that still can be included in impeding snow removal. I know there is a right-of-way off the edge of the road. We're not going to get into specifics, but a little common sense and a little courtesy goes a long way.
That's true. The last thing we want to ever have to do is to have the police come or have somebody's car towed because it's in the way. Sometimes the drivers will give a toot on the horn if they might see folks inside a house, or wait until a second pass if possible. They might be able to go around a car the first time through the street. So if we can, we like to give people a chance to get moved. We never want to be in the case where we're at odds with folks about it. It's real tough to back up a truck that big, as you might imagine, especially in a snowstorm when cars behind you are having a hard time slowing down. To see a truck backing at you is sort of a scary thing for a driver too. So we try not to back up with the plow trucks as often as we can. But sometimes if you can't get around a car, you don't have a choice. So that's a situation we want to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know working out in the street, we're getting many calls for service, whether it's rendering rescue aid to the elderly or car accidents. The last thing we need is responding to a call for a car impeding snow removal. I mean, I think that's just common sense and taking pride in your community, and you guys are providing a service, help keeping Merrimack safe and the roads in conditions where you're not causing accidents or whatever. So I hope everybody watching this show help spread the word. If you see anybody in your neighborhood that is parking on the side of the road like that, feel free to give us a call. I mean, we'll go over there and talk to them before a storm and try to educate them on what impeding means. I think a lot of folks just don't understand it. I mean, this is New England. We are going to get snow, and we have to be able to remove it from the streets in a safe manner. And like I said, nobody wants to damage anybody's property, and we do not want any issues with residents being upset with plow drivers or anything like that. So that's why we're doing this show, to try to educate folks on everybody hears, oh yeah, the winter parking ban. Well, it's I know personally, when I was working overnight shift, people still parking out on the streets. And we enforce that by giving them a warning. Obviously we don't want to write people tickets for it, but we will write you a warning, and if it continues to happen, then we will have to enforce it other ways. But so do everything you can to help the highway department do their job. I know you guys have those wing plows. It's not easy plowing the streets. I mean, you're talking what is it, 13, 14 feet of...
When the wing is fully out, can be 10, 12, 13 feet in some cases. So
yeah, and that's a lot to ask for the snowplow driver to maintain that safety that they need without trying to go around a car or whatever, and impeding the snow push off the wing. You know, so I think everybody, hopefully, you understand about snow removal, you know, the winter parking ban, impeding snow removal. I will throw out there, if you are impeding snow removal, you can be fined up to $500, and you are liable for the cost of the tow. I know if it comes down to that point in the middle of a storm, you know, we don't have the time, you know, your car will be towed and it will be at the owner's expense, and, you know, you could be fined up to $500, and I don't think anybody needs that. You know, we definitely don't want to enforce that, but at the same time, you know, we want you guys to be able to do your job, you know, safely and, you know, without, you know, added stress that you don't need.
I think by and large, considering how many people we've got in town, they do a really good job. You know, it's only one, two, a handful maybe during the storm that we have to kind of follow up on. So by and large, I think folks have got the idea and really adhere to it really well. Sometimes this time of year you get the visitors from out of town and they park on the road when they come to visit your house for a party or something. So I think more often than not it's folks that might not even know about it. So spread the word.
Yeah, and I think that's, you brought up a good point. You know, it's the holiday season. You know, we just had Thanksgiving. You know, so you do have, you know, folks coming up from out of state. You know, that's where I'll throw out there. Don't hesitate to talk to your neighbors. Say, hey, you know, I have a, you know, large amount of people coming over. You know, could we, you know, have some of them park in your driveway? You know, remember, that's what neighbors are all about. You know, I push my neighborhood crime watch, and that's part of, you know, being good neighbors is, you know, if you see your family next door to you have a big party, you know, maybe offer them to park in your driveway so you get them off the street. You know, Christmas is coming and New Year's, and, you know, so that was, you know, glad you brought that up. Made me think about, you know, how we can help, maybe get them off the street, you know. So, all right, so we have some other winter issues we'd like to talk about. This is a big one, the removal of, you know, snow and ice from vehicles. It's very important that you remove, you know, the snow from your vehicles. If you're going to be traveling on any roadway, it's your responsibility for, you know, removing all that snow off your vehicle. You know, if you have to stop or you take a corner and, you know, chunks of ice come off your roof, you're liable for that. If that causes damage to another vehicle, that's considered a motor vehicle accident. Anything that propels from your vehicle, you own it. I don't know if, you know, folks are aware of that, but it is. And, you know, it's not something you want to stop on the side of the road and, you know, clean your car off and, you know, impede traffic with a bunch of snow on it. So please clean your car off. And the other issue we see is obstructed view. If you wake up, you know, late for work, don't just run out and jump in your car and try to drive and, you know, look through a little space in your window and try to drive. It's not safe, and, you know, it's dangerous. It's really dangerous. I remember a few years ago we had a serious accident on Joppa Road. Somebody was, you know, running late, and, you know, they're looking out of a driver's license spot in their window, and they crest the hill, and the sunlight just completely blocked their vision, and they hit a car head on. Really, that can be avoided. If you're going to be late, you're going to be late. no sense of risking other people's lives or your own. Wait until your car defrosts and then go where you're going. You can always make a phone call and tell somebody, hey, I'm running a little late, Don't run that risk. It's not worth your life or anybody else's life. And I can tell you, we take that very serious, especially this time of year, because we see the effects of, what happens. So please clean your car off and make sure your window is clear of ice. If there's any ice on your windshield, it's bad enough when your window's clear and you hit that morning sun in the winter because of the glare from the snow and that. But if there's any ice on your windshield, when that sun hits it, it completely blurs your vision. It's really, really dangerous. So please clear your windows and clean your car off with snow. I just want to talk a little bit about preparedness. I think this last storm kind of took people by surprise, including myself, Adam. I know they were calling for snow, but I don't think anybody really predicted that it was going to be so moist snow, the weight
Sure.
of it.
The real heavy snow, yeah. With the outages, once they start happening, everybody kind of takes a step back and says, "Oh boy, we've got a little more than we bargained for in this storm."
Yeah, not only the power outages, but I know you guys were. I mean, what kind of issues that you guys run into when we get these type of snowstorms?
So this past one started off okay. We got the first few passes of the storm done, and then we started to get reports of transformers, popping, fires starting, a lot of tree branches down. Once a tree comes down on a road, if there's no lines impacted, sometimes we can use the plows to nudge the branch off the road, or we can dispatch a truck and a chainsaw if we can peel someone off to cut that. But as soon as any kind of lines are involved, we can't. So for the safety of our employees and for everybody else, we need to stay away and wait for the utilities to come or the fire department. So as soon as we start getting lines down across the road, now the entire scheme of how we plow and how we keep the roads open changes, because we have to come at a neighborhood from the back side maybe, or back down a street that we normally would be two-way traffic, close some roads. So we're trying to keep a tally at our dispatch center with the police dispatch of what roads are open, what are closed, what roads we're trying to work ourselves to get open, and what roads we have to give to PSNH or the fire department. Occasionally we need to help. There's only so many officers and fire department staff to go around, so sometimes we have to help with a road closure or to direct traffic. For instance, on Amherst Road, we had early on a car accident that took a pole down. So we had I think all three departments were there at one point, sending cars through different neighborhoods, and then you got to make sure that the detour route is now open and a tree hasn't come down there too. So it gets pretty dynamic in the middle of the storm. Our main goal is to keep the roads as clear as we can of snow, so the fire trucks and the police cars can get around and folks can get home. So we try to keep as many trucks on the road as we can doing that. But at some point it got bad enough where we had to pull a snowplow operator off and put him in a bucket loader and just drive around to the areas that we could and move trees. So spent a good portion of the time doing that.
Yeah. So, if you want to just tell the folks, when those type of situations happen and, maybe you had to pull their plow driver off that route, is there any way that they can, call you and just maybe ask a question?
Sure. We have normally during a big snowstorm, we'll have dispatch manned at the highway garage for the duration, and our number there is 423-8551. And we also have a Facebook page, facebook.com/MerrimackDPW, and that'll be checked periodically, but probably during the storm the best bet is to call the highway garage. and it does happen. Sometimes we'll have to pull someone off of a plow route and onto other emergency things. So you might be a little later in the storm to get a neighborhood plowed. If that's the case, we try to stick to the main roads at a minimum and keep the main heavily traveled roads open. The way we attack the town is we have 6 zones geographically, and ideally we have 3 plows per zone, so they try to focus on the main roads first and then move into the side streets and the neighborhood streets. So we can survive a loss of an operator here or there and still get the main roads open, but the neighborhood streets take that much longer when that happens. So we can flex a little bit, but once you start to lose 4 or 5 operators, it really changes how we can attack the snow.
And I know, like with that storm, like you said, I mean, it puts a strain on the resources, and Merrimack is lucky. We, all the departments work well together, and we couldn't do our job without you guys, and the assistance of the fire department, and so Merrimack is unique, and I think we have a great working relationship, and I think we provide great service to Merrimack. And in that storm, it was the trees go down. I think folks just want us to rush out there and remove the tree. Folks, we can't just do that. If that tree is on the primary and the neutral, that tree could be live. So, we're not equipped with, safety equipment to go and, go check that tree, see if it's still being charged, or, we can't tell if there's power still running through that. And then we're at the mercy of, PSNH to come out and, we have to wait to get the okay, all right, that, that line's, done, and, we can remove that tree. And, same with us. If there's lines down across the road, we're not going to run out there and move the lines off the road just to, open the road up. It's, it's not safe. And so I think a lot of times, we have to, take a look at ourselves, and, anytime those storms come, is it really necessary for you to be out on the road? If you're a medical emergency worker or something, and, you're getting called into work or whatever, that's, we need that. But, for people to, just go drive around looking at, the damage in the town, we don't need those folks on the road. Or, you ran out of milk or something. I just want to talk a little bit about being prepared. That preparedness factor in New England, you should have enough, food and water and, anything that you need to sustain for, at least a couple days. I think is a good idea for people to start thinking about, especially, we got that first power outage out of our system here, early on. So hopefully, you folks take that advice and, stock up on some stuff that you can, in case we lose power again. It's inevitable. It's a long winter. We probably will. So have that food, water, whatever you need, batteries for flashlights, and we'll go right into talking about generators. If you have a generator, first and foremost, know how to operate it. Now there's all kinds of safety switches that you can have put into your electrical panel that it's pretty simple. Start your generator outside and away from your home. Do not, leave your generator in your garage or in your breezeway or anything like that. They recommend you keep it, away from your home, your living area, so that carbon monoxide doesn't fill your house. If you watch the news, there's been many reports in this last storm that, people have lost their lives due to carbon monoxide poisoning. You won't know it. It's, odorless, so, you're not going to know that you are being affected. I believe you just, pretty much get tired and fall asleep, then that carbon monoxide will, take your life. So with that said, know how to operate your generator. Make sure you have, either an electrician or, somebody who knows, has experience in it, show you and make sure that you know how to operate it properly. Make sure you have enough gas on hand. That really big storm we had, was it last year?
2 years, yeah.
2 years ago, we were out, 7 days. And I know, the gas stations were running out of gas and stuff. So if you keep an extra 5 gallons of gas on hand, at least it will, you'll be that much ahead of, everybody else. CO detectors. I just want to, touch on that, because if you are running a generator and, you need that CO detector to, detect, depends on the way the wind blows. You have your generator out, but if it's blowing right, right at your house, you don't know. You don't know if you have, if that gas is seeping into your house. But if you have CO detectors, at least you'll be alerted, and we can, get the fire department down there and, check with their, more sophisticated meters or whatever, and, we can help you out. But if you don't know about it and we don't know about it, it's dangerous. So CO detectors, and again, fire detectors, change those batteries if, you still have batteries operated. And they all should be battery backup in case you do lose your power. You still have, the protection. Pets, you have enough food for your pet. Have you made arrangements maybe for if you lose power where, somebody else can, take your pet or whatever. And here's an issue I want to talk about. And this was Adam's idea, and I want to thank you for it. Adam came up with the idea last year of a little contest for a great cause. And I want to show you what it is. It's called Badges versus Hard Hats. And we, as the police department, have always run a holiday food drive. And, we donate that food to the 3 food pantries in town. So I'm going to let Adam tell you how he come up with this idea.
Well, I think it's important for, everybody that lives in town, works in town, that community mindedness that Officer Keller was talking about earlier is real important to me, and it's important to us in the Department of Public Works. So we saw what good things the police department had been doing each year with their food drive, and said, well, we want a piece of that action too. So we called them up and asked if they wouldn't mind a little friendly competition, and they said, hey, sure, we'll take it. So we try to do a collection every week and distribute that food to the 3 pantries, St. John's Church, St. James, and the Riverside Baptist Church, and to great success. I think the police department's a little bit more entrenched than the Public Works Department, so they've got us right now. I think 1,129 pounds to 305. So we're in second place, but it's all going to a good place and a good cause. So there's really no losers, even though we're behind at the moment.
Well, like you said, there is no losers, and I can personally tell you that all the trips that I've gone to the food pantries, the dire need for the assistance has grown. So I want to thank you for wanting to help the community, and we're open 24/7. You guys are open during the day, unless it's a snowstorm, but so we have easy access. Anybody that wants to donate some food, just come right to the police department or stop by the highway department.
Right.
And
Town Hall and the transfer station as well. We have 3 locations for Public
Oh,
Works. We're trying to get our 3 locations can maybe equal
okay.
your one main
You
headquarters.
didn't tell me
there.
about expanding.
Right.
So that's good. Where else are they?
Town Hall, lower level. That's where our Public Works Administration office is, the director and the town engineer. So down the old section, or the new section of Town Hall in the lower level, and then a transfer station office as well. They've got a box up there for donations. So if you
Great.
go to the recycling center or the dump, bring your donations, and
That's great.
they'll get added to our pile.
All right, so they're ramping up the competition on us, but we're still open 24/7. So feel free to stop by the police department, and we have plenty of donation boxes right in the lobby. So again, it's a great cause, and I really appreciate your willingness, and it really does help out this community greatly. I think we've talked about everything. If I just want to talk a little bit about how we send out emergency alerts. We use Nixel, NIXEL.com. If you go on that Nixel.com, you can register and get all the Nixel alerts that either the police department sends out, or the highway department, or even the town manager's office sends some out.
They come as a text message over the phone, right?
Yep. I think you get a text or email, or even on your cell phone. So there's many different ways you can sign up for that. And Facebook, we do Facebook, Twitter. If you go on our website, there's all kinds of links to sign up. Anything that goes on, any kind of news alert or whatever, it all gets put out there. So if you want to keep up to date, on anything that you should know, what's happening in your community, sign up so you get those alerts.
I just got one a few minutes ago about the holiday parade. They changed the date, and I got a Nixel alert to tell us it's on Sunday now.
I'm glad you said that. The holiday parade was Saturday. It's now Sunday, same time. 3 o'clock is the parade, and 3:45 is the tree lighting ceremony. So, thanks, Adam.
Sure.
I think that's all we're going to talk about. And again, the preparedness. If you go on the FEMA.com, any of the FEMA sites, they'll have a list. They actually put out a list of what you should have. Here's one: water, a gallon of water per person per day for at least 3 days. Food, at least 3 days supply of non-perishable food. Battery powers, for radio, or extra batteries for flashlights. A first aid kit. If you're if you happen to cut yourself, and you need to put direct pressure on it until we can get out and help you, especially when it's right in the midst of the storm. There could be delays with the roadways and stuff. So just a reminder, it's the winter season, so we have to start gearing our mindset to winter and being prepared. And a big thing is you might have to start getting up a little bit early in those snowstorms if you have to go to work. I know we don't plow highways, but it's a big issue when you're trying to rush on the highway when they're trying to clear it. They don't want you going around plows and causing all kinds of accidents. So same thing in town, expect delays. When there's a snowstorm, you're gonna have to get up a little early if you have to go to work. And my biggest thing is, if you don't have to be on the road, please stay off the road. That's the best advice we can give you. If you can avoid an accident, if you can avoid, just the stress of not being on the road when a lot of things are going on, it works for everybody. So, anything else you'd like to add?
Just swing by the highway garage, the town hall, or the transfer station with your food items, and we'll gladly accept them. But thanks for paying attention. It's all important stuff.
All right. Thanks, folks. That wraps up this month's episode. Enjoy your holidays and be safe.